Your dog knows you are lonely before you do. Research on cortisol synchrony between dogs and their owners found that a dog's stress hormones begin tracking their owner's emotional state over months, not moments. If you want to understand what your dog is really telling you, you are in the right place. Picture a Saturday afternoon. You are not sad, not crying, not even particularly stressed. At least that is what you would say if someone asked. You are just quiet, moving through the house, doing small things, folding laundry, refilling your water, staring at your phone for a few seconds without knowing why. And your dog is there for every single step, not because they need water, not because they heard a noise. They are simply tracking you, a soft, constant satellite orbiting your movements with a precision that would feel intrusive if it came from a human. Maybe they have started pressing their body against your leg when you sit down. Maybe they have begun sleeping directly against you instead of at the foot of the bed. Maybe they bring you a toy not to play, but just to make contact, to hand you something as if to say, I am here. Most owners chalk this up to loyalty, to breed temperament, to the fact that dogs just love their people. And that is true in a sense, but that framing misses something important. Because what your dog is responding to is not a behavior you are doing, it is a state you are in. And they have been reading that state far longer than you have been aware of it. Here is what the research says, and it is worth sitting with for a moment. In 2019, a team of researchers at Linköping University in Sweden published a study in Scientific Reports examining long-term cortisol levels in dog-owner pairs. They measured cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, from hair samples taken across several months. What they found was striking. The stress levels of dogs and their owners were synchronized, not correlated by circumstance, not explained by shared activity levels. The dogs had absorbed the emotional signature of their human. But here's the part that tends to stop people. The synchrony was stronger in owners who scored higher on measures of neuroticism, the personality trait associated with emotional reactivity, self-consciousness, and a tendency to experience negative emotions. The dogs of anxious, emotionally guarded people were more stressed, not because of anything those owners did, because of what they felt and what they would not say. Your dog is not responding to your loneliness because they feel sorry for you. They are responding because their nervous system has learned to mirror yours. That is not comfort. Number 1. Dogs follow lonely owners differently than they follow happy ones. This is subtle but observable. A dog following a content, engaged owner tends to move with loose, exploratory energy, drifting ahead, doubling back, stopping to sniff. But a dog following a withdrawn or emotionally flat owner tends to stay closer, tighter. They match pace, maintain contact, and they check in. That quick upward glance while moving, more frequently. Researchers studying dog attachment behavior, including foundational work by Josef Topal and colleagues at Aarhus Lorand University, found that dogs form genuine attachment bonds with their owners, complete with the proximity-seeking, safe haven, and separation anxiety signatures we associate with infant attachment to caregivers. But what that research also showed is that the intensity of proximity-seeking scales with the owner's emotional availability, or lack of it. Dogs press closer when the emotional temperature of the room drops. When you go quiet inside, they come physically closer outside. If your dog has started shadowing you more than usual, that is not clinginess. That is your dog responding to a signal you did not know you were sending. The question is not why they are following you. The question is what they are following you toward. Number 2, the way your dog looks at you changes when you are lonely. In 2015, Miho Nagasawa and colleagues at Azabu University in Japan published a landmark study in the journal Science, showing that mutual gaze between dogs and their owners triggers a release of oxytocin in both species, the same bonding hormone involved in parent-infant attachment. But what that study also revealed was that dogs initiate this gaze more often with owners who are emotionally available, and that owners who are socially isolated or withdrawn receive longer, more sustained gaze from their dogs. The dog is not waiting for you to engage them. They are trying to pull you back into contact. That sustained, searching look your dog gives you when you go quiet, the one that almost feels like a question, is not accidental. It is the product of 15,000 years of coevolution. Your dog has been selected generation after generation for the ability to read human faces, and what they are reading in yours when you are lonely is something they know how to respond to, even if you do not. The gaze is not curiosity. If that just made you see your relationship with your pet in a completely different way, hit subscribe. We explore the science of the human-pet bond every week and what it reveals about us. All right, let us keep going. Number 3. Where your dog sleeps is a map of your emotional state. Dogs who sleep at the foot of the bed or in their own space are dogs whose owners' nervous systems are regulated. They are not needed as a co-regulator. But dogs who migrate, who start the night at the foot of the bed and end up pressed against your back, or who abandon their own bed entirely to sleep against you, are dogs responding to a shift. That shift is often loneliness, or more precisely, what loneliness does physiologically. A subtle elevation in cortisol before sleep, a slightly elevated heart rate, shallower breathing. These are signals your dog detects and responds to with contact. They are not cuddling. They are regulating. This is a distinction worth making. When your dog presses their warm weight against you in the night, it is easy to feel loved. And you are. But you are also being monitored. Their body is reading your body. Their proximity is therapeutic in both directions. Their warmth slows your cortisol, and the contact confirms to them that you are okay. If your dog has changed their sleeping location in recent months, drifted closer without any obvious reason, that is not a phase. That is a response to something that has changed in you. Number 4. Your dog's anxiety is often a portrait of your own. This is the finding that tends to make owners uncomfortable. Because it is one thing to hear that your dog loves you deeply. It is another to hear that your dog's pacing, their hypervigilance at the door, their inability to settle, might be a direct reflection of what your nervous system is doing when you are not watching yourself. The Sunman et al. Study we referenced earlier found that cortisol synchrony was bidirectional. Owners' stress affected dogs, and dogs' chronic stress could feed back into owners' baselines. But more specifically, they found that dogs owned by people who reported higher levels of social isolation showed more anxious behavioral profiles, lower exploratory behavior, higher reactivity, more frequent vigilance behaviors. Your dog did not develop anxiety in a vacuum. Their nervous system has been shaped by the emotional climate of your home. And if that climate includes the quiet, unspoken kind of loneliness, the kind that doesn't feel dramatic enough to name, your dog has been living inside it too. None of that makes you a bad owner. It makes you human. But it does mean that the most effective thing you can do for your dog's anxiety might be to take your own seriously. Number 5. The intensity of your dog's greeting tells you something about your emotional economy. Every dog greets their owner at the door. That is normal, and it is one of the genuinely uncomplicated joys of living with a dog. But there is a difference between a happy greeting and a frantic one. And there is a difference between a dog who is glad you are back and a dog who behaves as if they were not sure you would come back at all. The frantic greeting, the one with full body trembling, the inability to settle even after several minutes, the following you room to room for the next hour. That pattern is associated with something specific in the research on attachment: anxious attachment style. In dogs, as in humans, anxious attachment produces hyperactivation of the attachment system whenever reunion occurs after separation. But here is the owner psychology piece. Studies on the human side of the bond, including work drawing on Schoberl and colleagues' research on owner personality and dog behavior, found that owners who scored high on anxiety and low on social connectedness tended to have dogs with more intense separation and reunion behaviors. The dog had learned that separations are emotionally significant events, because for their owner, they were. Your dog's homecoming response is calibrated to how much your departures cost them, and that depends in part on how much your presence costs you to give. Number 6. When your dog becomes your primary relationship, they know it, and it changes them. This is the one that requires the most care to say, because it is not about guilt. It is about precision. There is a growing body of research on what psychologists call the substitution hypothesis, the idea that people use pets to partially substitute for human social connection when that connection is unavailable or feels unsafe. This is not pathological, it is adaptive. Your dog genuinely fulfills several of the same psychological functions as a human relationship. They provide comfort, consistency, a sense of being known, a reason to get up in the morning. These are real and valuable things. But dogs who become primary attachment figures for lonely owners develop a particular behavioral signature: heightened social referencing. They check in with their owner's face more often, in more situations, and in ways that reflect the owner's elevated importance in their social world. The dog's entire navigational system for the world runs through you. You have become effectively their whole social reality. That is a profound form of love. It is also a weight, and your dog carries it differently than a human partner would, without complaint, without withdrawal, without burnout. Which is part of why it is so easy not to notice. So what do you do with this? First, you do not pathologize it. The fact that your dog has become sensitively attuned to your loneliness does not mean something is broken. It means the bond is working exactly as it evolved to work. Dogs are exquisitely sensitive to human emotional states because that sensitivity is what made the human-dog partnership function for 15,000 years. You did not teach your dog to read you. You just gave them enough time and proximity to do what they are built for. But here is the self-awareness piece. If your dog's behavior has changed, closer, more watchful, harder to settle, more intense at greetings, that is information, not about your dog, about you. It is worth asking, what has shifted in my social world in the last several months? Am I getting the kind of connection that actually refills me, or am I getting busy, getting through, and calling it fine? Your dog cannot tell you that you are lonely. They are not built for language, but they are built for something more precise. They are built to feel it, to mirror it, and to respond to it with the only tool they have: presence. Constant, uncomplicated, soul-body presence. That is not neediness, that is attunement, and it is worth letting it point somewhere. There is a moment that happens in almost every home with a dog. You are having a quietly hard day. Nothing dramatic, nothing worth explaining to anyone. You sit down, and before you have said a word, your dog is there, pressed against you, watching you, offering the one thing they know how to give. Most of us interpret that as sweetness, and it is. But it is also something more. It is your dog telling you something true about yourself. Something they have been reading in your cortisol, in your posture, in the cadence of your footsteps across the floor. Something you may not have said to anyone, maybe not even to yourself. They are not fixing your loneliness. They cannot do that. But they are the only one in your life who noticed it without being told, who responded without being asked, who showed up not because of what you said, but because of what you are. That is not a small thing. That is your dog being, in the most literal biological sense, more honest about your inner life than anyone else in the room. Thank you for investing your time with us today. Now that you know your dog's behavior shifts in direct response to the loneliness you have not named out loud, we are curious. Has your dog changed how close they stay to you recently? And what do you think that might be telling you? Let us know in the comments. New episodes drop every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, so make sure you are subscribed to catch the next one. Until then, decode your dog, decode yourself.